All right, let's do this.
Yes.
So first and foremost, welcome to the show. As you know, this is a very special episode. This is the first episode we're doing from BusinessWith. The name of the podcast is I.C.P. And with me today, I have none other than Mattias Borg. Welcome again.
Thank you so much.
I was gonna get into a lot of stuff today about, as we spoke about before, talking about your journey into SaaS. We'll discuss more about growth strategies that you see working, right? And we'll also dive deep into the category specific questions that I have for you today, right?
Yep.
But before we get started, right, I think I'm gonna hit you with the first and the hardest question that you're gonna be able to answer today, I think. And for those of you that don't know, who is Mattias Borg?
Oh, wow. That one. I didn't prepare for that one. Who is he? He's a guy who is very curious. He's from the north of Sweden.
Right. Where specifically?
From Östersund. So love going up there still, skiing. Love to be in the mountains.
Right.
Love the mix of being in the city and in the countryside.
Right.
I value family, friends. And I do enjoy, as I said, skiing, golfing. I also live with my family, 2 kids, 9 and 12 here in Stockholm, and my wife.
Right.
As a person, I think I'm a weird mix of introvert and extrovert.
Yeah.
So I really need my time for myself to charge energy.
Right.
But people also, when they meet me, believe that I'm a true extrovert.
Yeah.
So it confused me for like 30 years, to be honest. Who am I? Am I the introvert or am I extrovert? Right. I think I'm both.
Yeah.
Which is sometimes confusing, not only to me, but also for people around me.
Yeah.
And I'm also a person who loves building stuff. Which I guess leads us into today.
Obviously, yeah, of course, 100%. Well, of course, then let's get into it. Today you are, CEO and co-founder of Learnifier.
Yeah.
But then tell me about, the background, right? You told us a little bit about where you were from and so on. But if you take it from a professional perspective, how did you even get your start into SaaS, right? This wonderful world of SaaS.
Yep, the SaaS world.
Right, exactly. Tell me a little bit about that, and then tell me how you ended up in SaaS, right? What was the path here, and then how did you end up in just specifically SaaS, right?
Yeah. It's. I figured we would talk about that, so I kind of started thinking back, and I was fortunate. I started a small consulting company in 1999.
Yeah.
Doing like internet consulting stuff, working with the 4 founders. I was not one of them, but so my first project was building an intranet for SIDA, the big government agency.
Yeah, got it.
And I didn't know at the time, but I know already then we talked about building something for them that we can then resell, which is kind of building the standard code base.
Right.
So that's one part of the SaaS business model, is that you build one code base that you sell to multiple customers.
Yeah.
It totally did not work. It was totally spaghetti code, so we totally messed that one up. It was good for SIDA, but not good for selling to others.
Right.
So I think that was, looking back, that was kind of my first, early in my career, understanding that that's the way you can think about the business.
Yeah.
Next step was in 2006, then we built the first product. And then we actually built it as a SaaS product, multi-tenant, even with... layering in that, but multi-tenancy was a core concept in that platform that we built.
Right.
I think it was a good, strong SaaS product. We didn't know that it was a SaaS product. I think this was about the time where Salesforce really cut through and SaaS was really becoming a thing. We didn't call it SaaS.
And this was
actually back in 2006.
Okay.
This was kind of the first product that I built.
Right.
Not for someone else. Which was then before Learnifier.
Yeah.
We though didn't think about a go-to-market strategy, so we missed that part of the SaaS thing. So it didn't end up being a huge success. It was comparable to what you maybe would call a Qualtrics or Netigate today. That type of product. It actually still has some revenue coming in, but so I guess a success in one way, but also failure in terms of selling it to the market.
Right.
So I think that was the first. The second, or maybe the first true SaaS model, but then it took until we released Learnifier or thought about that idea in like 2012 until we were really certain that we will build it as a SaaS company, both in terms of how we built the product, but also how we sold it to the market.
Right.
So that's, I guess, is the way into the SaaS world.
Got it.
Yeah.
And also tell me about, your disciplines, or maybe your areas of expertise in those aspects, or in the history that you talked about right now, in the companies that you've been involved with.
Yeah.
Would you say you were more, heavy on the product side, or were you more on the sales side, on the marketing side, or were you sort of full stack business developer?
No, I would say so in school I did systems development and business, but I started, I was actually hired as a programmer.
Okay.
But it took a few weeks, and then I was a product manager.
Okay.
But I was still on the product side. So I would say I've always, as I said, I love building stuff, and I love building product, and that I would say that's where I come from originally, and that's when I wake up in the morning, I think about product primarily, to be honest.
Okay.
Or actually not product, it's solving problems with product. That's what I think, that's what makes me tick.
Yeah.
But then I also, part of the kind of the journey for me is that I did tech for maybe 5 or 6 years, but I ended up, or I put myself in a position in a job that actually got me quite bored. Yeah. And then
What was that?
So I was self-acclaimed CIO of an advertising agency. IT manager thing. So it was more admin, IT stuff, not building stuff, more maintaining stuff.
Okay.
And beautiful company, beautiful office, great customers, but it bored me. So I decided to get out of that, and then I started my first company at that time, and that's also when I totally switched career into starting doing leadership training.
Right.
Yeah. So that's obviously doing that. I did consulting. I had to sell and sell myself, which was tough. Yeah. Then also the speaking, and then that's kind of what led me into then obviously being part of founding Learnifier, which is a combination of training and tech, obviously.
Exactly. Yeah. But so would you then say, of course, which is maybe obvious, but would you say that going into more leadership training and consulting kind of led you into the world of both learning and sort of tech?
The leadership training part?
Yeah.
I would say maybe, I was already in the tech part before that, but then it led me into the learning part, for sure, but it also led me into the selling part. Yeah. Because I had to sell, and that's actually when I took my first sales training.
Okay.
So there was this guy who helped us out, and he did sales training with us for free, super nice, like a mentor. Yeah. And that was my first step into that, just understanding how you do like a needs analysis and all of that. Yeah. Which at the time seemed like, makes sense. But then I understood this was really foundation in understanding and how you sell product to market and how you work with it. Because I, to some degree, had the mindset that if you build a great product, the customers will come, build it and they will come. That was kind of the mantra of the .com era. Yeah. But I've since learned that is not the case. and it's a terrible excuse for not growing and getting successful. This too.
Got it. And I think still to this day, I think that some people found companies or start companies with that analogy, meaning if you build it, then they'll come. Yeah. And in some cases it works, but in most cases I think it's better to do it the other way around.
Yeah. No, I think that's totally true. There's tons of great products out there that don't find a market because there's it might not be a budget or it's not urgent enough. So
no, of course, and I agree with that, of course, because there's, as we say sometimes, especially from a marketing perspective, like what would you rather do most? Like would you rather do terrific marketing, with a semi-good product, or would you do, half-ish good marketing with a beautiful product, right? Yeah. And that's, I think, pretty much the same analogy, meaning if you build it first and they'll come. But no, I think what we're saying is you got to be able to build something that actually has a need out there, and not just something that you think is good or cool, right? Yeah. So I think that makes perfect sense, of course.
But I guess that also is what ties the two together, because if you truly understand the customer need, hopefully then you're also able to market to that, because you can speak the customer's language, pinpoint their needs and their pains, etc.
100%.
But then again, as most things in the world, easier said than done.
100%. We've been mentioning, of course, learning and Learnifier, of course, in this few minutes. Tell me, like, why did you start Learnifier?
So at the time, I was a trainer. Like, I did leadership core facilitation, and I was interacting with a lot of training companies and also with companies like L&D departments, HR departments.
Right.
And it kind of amazed me, coming from a tech world, that it was still so analog, everything.
Yeah.
And I looked around in the market, and there was already at that time, so this is probably like 2011 maybe, there were like LMS platforms, there were HR systems, but they were not the ones that I wanted to use. Because they were really centered around administration, like learning management. Right. Not learning, it was learning management. That was the thing. So it was a system for learning management. Right. We wanted to build, me and the team wanted to build a product that actually took care of the learning. And then obviously the learning management needs to happen. Of course. But that's not a value in itself. It's the actual learning and what comes out of that. That was the focus. So that was kind of the lead into starting Learnifier and trying out that. We wanted to use it ourselves, to be honest, and that's also how we started. Right. One of the companies that was part of founding was actually the second customers, or the first customer, depending on how you see it. And the company that I did consulting for was the other customer. So in a way, we really built it for ourselves. Right. And then there happened to be a broader need for it. Exactly. Once again, to some degree, starting with a need, not like a market analysis, will this sell? Starting with the idea of this is a problem that we see and I have. Yeah. I guess other people might have it, and then we had to figure out who could buy it.
Exactly. Yeah. No. Cool. And then, if you dig a little bit deeper into, what it is that Learnifier does, which is also, I know, quite difficult to just answer simply, but this is a forum where we actually can dig deep. So don't be afraid of, talking about it in a broader perspective. Yeah. But then also, what it is that Learnifier does, of course.
Yeah, so the short version is that we provide a learning platform to companies and organizations. Yeah. That's really the short form of it. Yeah. Obviously, what we're helping customers is, our customer often has some sort of a training need or a learning and development need. Yeah. And they need some way of both doing the admin part, as I talked about. Training involves a lot of administration, like manuals, sending reminders, sending invites, things like that. That's one part of it. There's also one part of it that is the actual content creation, which is, so if you're going to do training digitally, and we don't only do digital training, but like online learning is one piece of it. Right. Then you need a tool to do that. And then there's obviously learning experience, which is probably the most important one. Yeah. So those are kind of the differences. So companies that come to us, they have some sort of a training need, slightly more complex in many cases, or it's important to them. So then we help them solve the kind of the platform need for delivering that training. Yeah,
got it.
And as said, it's not only like, it's not pure e-learning. We have a lot of customers that do everything from hybrid learning or blended learning, some call it, where it's a mix of class. I'm still a big believer in this. Yeah, of course. Like human-to-human interaction, that's I think is super important in learning. But there's way too many things that are done like this and way too expensive that could be done digitally. And some things actually are also better when done online, I would say. Yeah,
for sure.
So where you can space out learning over time, etc. Yeah. So there's pros and cons, but then you need to gather all of it into some sort of space.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Perfect. Yeah. And then what would you say, if you look at sort of the time perspective, how long ago was Learnifier founded, would you say?
Yeah, so that's also a question. So it's about 10 years ago that we released the first version of the product. Yeah. And then I think the name Learnifier came about slightly less than 10 years ago. It was called something else before. But then so the idea was really that, obviously, as most people funding a company today, one of the tricky parts is funding a domain name. So that was part of the equation. But we also found that, like, one of the things we wanted to do was to amplify learning. Right. So learning plus amplify becomes Learnifier. So that was kind of the story behind that. Which is actually It's just been talked about because our logo also resembles the Marshall brand, the amplifier brand.
Yeah, for sure.
So that's kind of where that came from.
Okay.
Yeah, but that was about 10 years ago. Then it's been a journey. Like those 10 years, we've shifted our focus, shifted who we're selling to how we're selling. And also I would say that from a growth perspective, a lot of the growth has happened in the last 4 years. So I often say it's a marathon. It's like for most companies, it takes 10 years to build a company. I think that most companies takes time. It's finding your way and your path and everything.
For sure, 100%. Well, then let's get into it. If we look at as you said, like 10 years since you kind of launched. Where are you at today? Size-wise, team-wise, right? Maybe start there. Like, how many people are working at Learnifier today?
Yeah, so we're about 45 to 50 people, depending on how you include consultants, etc.
Right.
Yeah, so that's about the size of the team. Mostly based here in Stockholm, but we also have people both spread out in Sweden, but also in other countries. So it's a growing team. Yeah,
for sure, 100%. And I've been knowing you for a while, so I can say that. It's really a growing team, and it's fun to see. If you talk a little bit about, for the people that are listening in, of course, team size is one thing. Look at revenue size. What would you say you're at right now?
We're at 35, I would say, last year, and growing. So it will be north of that this year.
Hopefully. And also, I wanted to get into we were talking about the aspect before of if you build it, then they will come. Or the other aspect is maybe you try to figure out exactly what people need and then probably build that. And I think if you have the perspective of saying, hey, if you just build it, they'll come. That usually comes with having some money as well, right? So it's you can understand why, of course. So I just wanted to know, how were you funded and how are you funded? If you don't mind talking a little bit about that.
Yeah, sure.
So take the perspective of when you started and maybe where you're at right now in terms of funding or funding versus the bootstrap journey, right?
So we are. So maybe taking 2 steps back here is that I mentioned the first product we built. It actually created some revenue for us. During that entire phase, I was consulting. The entire founding team was consulting. So that's how we earned money. And then we built product when we had time. The same goes as we founded Learnifier. We had a customer that we worked closely with that was actually part of funding parts of it, but as a paying customer. But we were also very clear on what we were building. So I remember talking to that first customer, and they said, your work for hire? And we said, nah, it's more like leasing a car. It's not buying the car, you're leasing it. But that has been an amazing relationship. So it was a great start both for them and for us. But it really helped us take off. But then we've been consulting on the side in the early years. We also had one of those defining moments where we had to cut all of our consulting relationships because of values differences. So we've been through that where you don't get paid for a year, which kind of makes you ask many times, do I still want to do this? And obviously we did. But I think it's important because it kind of do I stop here now that I don't get a paycheck, or do I move forward? Is it important enough? And yes, it was. And then I would say we bootstrapped this far. We don't have any institutional capital. Obviously, we put in some money ourselves. We have some friends and family that have put in some money. Last year. So still running a profitable business, growing, and hopefully we'll continue to grow and might even increase that. And then, so that's the path we've chosen. We've been in discussions, but decided not to proceed with, for example, VC funding at this stage. So not closing the door to that in the future. But for now, this has been our trajectory and our way of growing.
Nice, man. And I think I want to stay at this topic a little bit because I think it's usually there's more perspective to this than just 2, but obviously there's 2 different ways of doing it, which is more concrete, right? One is obviously doing the bootstrap way, doing things the way that you just described, and the other way is obviously getting some money from a VC fund or something like that, right? But then I want to understand more of, you know, what made you and the team here choose to do it this way, and you know, what kind of, how should I say, like what kind of benefits do you see of doing it this way as opposed to maybe the other way? Even though I understand it's difficult to talk about it from the other perspective, right?
But obviously I talk to people that have taken funding, and to start with, I think there's many good reasons for taking on external funding.
Of course,
and there's definitely a situation where you should do that because you want to grow faster, etc.
Of course, yeah. But as I said,
for us, it's been one. I would say it's we've had the opportunity to do that. We've put ourselves in a position where it was possible, which, in hindsight, especially for some pairs, I'm really glad we didn't take on capital. For example, during COVID, we had to. It was we had a period where it was quite stressful. Having external funding at that time, I think would have been it would have been harder to be strategic in our decision making. I believe. These are all assumptions, obviously.
Of course,
but I mean, we've put ourselves in a position where we could grow in a bootstrap way. I think that, as I said, there will be situations where we want to pour potentially more capital into, for example, expansion.
Right.
And then I think if we know that we have a working machine and we know the metrics and everything, we just want to expand that, it would make a lot of sense to pour more money into that.
100%.
And as I said, now we've gone this path, and it's worked for us.
No, of course. And I mean, I'm not.
And it's also like when you, and I think most people understand this, like if you do a VC funding thing, for example, the expectation is like 10x. And that puts pressure on the business, which, as I said, it's good in many scenarios, but not in all, because it can tear the business apart. And I think I would say I've seen a path where this could grow profitably and continue growing, and take us to a position where we in the future might want to take that different road.
Exactly. No, and I wanted to specifically ask you this question because I feel like you have not a unique perspective on it, because I think that a lot of people agree with the fact that if you choose to do it the bootstrap way, then that comes with, of course, a lot of flexibility, and you know you sort of avoid a lot of expectations and so on, and you can sort of do it the way you want it to, right? But I think there's another thing about this that's getting more obvious now than ever before, I think, right? And that is, you know, we've seen the valuations of SaaS companies for the past 10 years, right? And or I would say the past 8.5 years. And then everybody was like, okay, this is sort of a gold mine, right? And you can just, you know, pour money into this and you'll probably 10x your money easily, right? And everybody was happy. And then now we've come to a place where everybody's starting to look for profitability. They're starting to look for more, you know, how do you say it, more secure business models, right? Or companies that can probably hold their own, right? And this is a position that you guys are obviously in right now, and that must feel good in some way, of course, knowing that, hey, I took a decision, you know, a long time ago that kind of went against the odds, right? And now I'm at a position where I think a lot of companies would like to be. You understand what I mean? And I know you're humble. I know you're a very humble person.
But I mean, this is the only way I know, and to me it make. It, of course, especially what has happened during the last 2 years, ish. I'm happy that we made the choices we made, since we're now in a position where at this time, for example, we're investing more than we've ever done in product. And I'm so excited about that, but because we have the possibility to do that, right? And it's also, I mean, it's great because we can attract great people, and so it's a super exciting phase that we put ourselves in. So it's it's good. It's a good position in that way. But then once again, it's. obviously it takes longer, and it's not always possible, I think.
Yeah, no.
And I think that there's parts that are a great adjustment, because to some, there's definitely been cases where money should not have been poured in.
Yeah.
And I'm not talking about it's always easy in hindsight,
no,
but it's been a mania of, like, the ones profiting it is probably Google, because the Google Ads prices are going up, and that's where the budgets go, or it's in training AI models that is like, which is obviously super important to go that path, but it's just increasing the prices. So.
No, I totally understand where you're coming from on this, and again, it's not to bash the decision to take in money early on, but I just think that, I've been seeing you for many years doing business, right? And I think for me, if we take, also a step back, looking at coming into the SaaS world, like not knowing much about the SaaS world, not knowing much about even what a VC does, right? Yeah. And then, building this company and looking at, okay, what's going on around me, and you start seeing that, okay, this company was just valued at this many $1 million, right? And then this company just got a valuation that's crazy, right?
Oh yeah, but I mean, that goes on internally. Obviously, we see and read how other companies are founded.
Of course.
It creates some stress on the organization, for sure.
Exactly, and I just want to say, like, for me, when I was viewing that for the first time, and I was thinking, like, okay, well, why aren't everybody doing this, right? And in this case, but just by ending this part of it, like, I just want to say that I think I just want to salute you for keeping that patience, thinking strategically about it, and doing what you think is right, and not just being, pressured by what's going on in your community, because I think that's super easy. Because I even sometimes looked at you and I was like, man, why isn't he doing what everybody else is doing, right? But now, coming to, as we all mature and we learn more, of course, and we see many different perspectives, I just realized that, man, I think that he was it was inspiring to see, right? And I just want to salute you for having that patience and, doing things the way that you want to do it, rather than, being influenced by all of these $1 billion, valuations and so on. Because I think it's easy to get lost in that.
Thank you. And maybe adding to that, I think also myself, as I believe many others, have looked at the kind of the San Francisco Silicon Valley companies, and it's and I'm not talking about funding, but in terms of business model, because I know even as we started out, it was supposed to be $9.99. Which works great for a global scale up, going B2C. Not a great model potentially if you want to bootstrap a B2B company. But I think it's because you see those companies, and then you might think that's the path to success. And I think there's many great examples, both here in Sweden, but international as well, that have shown that there's a totally different way where you can really kind of extract the value from what you're selling, because it creates a lot of value. And to be honest, if you compare to other things for a company, software is comparably cheap, I would say. And I think that's the upside for the market. Technology is deflationary in general because it pushes prices down. But I think that the software has, in general, the pricing has it's fairly cheap, I would say.
No, of course. And the only time that you get to understand how cheap software is when you talk to your buddies or friends that are working in other industries, they're selling machinery or, I don't know, electric cars and so on. And you look at the costs and, the P&Ls of what they're doing, and you're like, okay, now I see the perspective here, right? Which is always good to get.
But that's also what's like going back to SaaS. I think what's interesting, like the reason obviously for being able to sell at this price point is that we sell the same product many times, and you get scale into it, and then you can keep that price.
Of course.
But that's also part of connecting pricing to bootstrapping, because I can tell you we've been in a position on the market where we had to let business go, because competition has pulled pricing down for certain segments, and we've been very clear we're not going to take that business. We're leaving that because it's not going to work. We're not going to be profitable if we take that business.
Right.
So that's one of the major challenges, because then you have to step away.
Exactly. And again, just getting back to it, I think that's a decision you can make when you're in a position that Learnifier is in, I think, because that's, imagine saying that to, a VC fund manager that has invested a lot of money in your company, saying, no, I'm not going to take that business because it's too cheap, right? Yeah. Well, I don't think you can say that in a case like that. But again, okay, let's get into let's get into. You've been talking about the growth journey of Learnifier, right? Yeah. And then you're at 35 today. And then you were talking about, we'll see.
We were at 35 earlier.
Oh, okay, my bad.
Mr. Secret.
Yeah. Okay. I see. Well, then, let's say you were at 35 at some point, right? Yeah. And then I wanted to know, looking at revenue is of course one metric, of course, right? It's very obvious, but it doesn't really tell the entire story, right? So there's obviously in this beautiful world of SaaS, there's so many different metrics that we can look at, right? But I just wanted to see, when you look at, how is my company doing? What are some of the 3 to 5 maybe metrics that you like to see the most and like to look at the most, and also maybe expect your direct reports to be, have a close eye on, right? Yeah. So tell me a little bit about those metrics and what those would be here.
Yeah. So maybe to start with, I think just educating ourselves as a team in these metrics are important, because at least many of us know about revenue and profit, and potentially cash and the difference between the two. Yeah. But in a SaaS business, there's more dynamics that you need to be aware of. So I think that's a continuous, ongoing journey within the company to learn and understand what this means. Yeah. One part of that is trying to keep away from the abbreviations. Mm-hmm. Because in general, I don't like that, because there's new people in boards, what is ARR, NRR, LTV? And it's a great way of losing people. Right. But I'm going to use them anyway.
No, of course.
Because we're on the metrics area now.
Exactly.
So we have a North Star metric, which is really around our ARR growth. Okay. That's what we follow, and that's really our North Star metric. Right. So we set targets for what the ARR growth should be. Okay. And that's shared for the entire team. Right. And just thinking, so for our business, most of the revenue that we have is recurring. Yeah. It's 90% plus. Yeah. So that's why it makes a lot of sense for us. But also, obviously, given the business model, the recurring piece is kind of the golden revenue that we keep getting. Yeah. So that's why you focus on that. Of course. Then that's the start. Then we divide that into 2 pieces. We have the NRR, which is the net retention rate, right? Which is how we measure our existing customer base. Yeah. So, and this goes also back to our growth philosophy. If we make sure that this is obvious things for many, but if you don't have a leaky bucket, meaning that if you make sure that your net retention rate is above 100%, your existing customer base is growing, right? Which means that everything new you're selling is on top. Yeah. So that's the other metric, which is the new IRR, which is what you measure in terms of sales. Yeah. So those two together then add up to the ARR metric then. Yeah.
Those two, which ones? The NRR?
NRR plus new ARR.
Ah, okay, yeah.
So that's kind of how we do the math around that. Yeah. And then below that, there's the margin, which is super important, because if you would hire 100 people to take care of our customers, the margin would be lousy, the NRR would be high. But so you need to keep the margin, and then on the other side, you have the CAC LTV, which is customer acquisition cost in relationship to lifetime value. Yeah, and that's the measurement we keep an eye on to make sure that we invest at the right pace in sales and marketing. Yeah. So I guess that's kind of the foundation of how we measure things. Right.
So mainly ARR for, the top level maybe. Yep. And then NRR also, of course, an important metric. And then the CAC to LTV would be another one.
And the margin.
And the margin, of course, yeah.
So it becomes kind of a tree where we have the one part of the business focused on NRR and margin, and the other part on new IRR and CAC LTV.
Yeah. Okay. Nice. Cool. And then looking at this, of course, I also wanted to get into sort of the organizational structure, maybe. I mean, and not in detail, right? But I just wanted to know if these are metrics that you guys keep a close eye on. Look at sort of who are your direct reports, and maybe how are some of, not who they are, but how is the organization structured in terms of key roles, and then how many would you say are reporting to you, and what are those roles basically? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah. I just have to think it out.
Yeah.
So you like the two main areas is product engineering, and then we have the commercial side. Right. So those are the two big buckets. Yeah. We don't have anyone everyone is working either with product or commercial. Yeah. And I'm working with both. Yeah. So that's the entire organization right there. Today, reporting to me, I have Marie, who's the head of our commercial side, and then Jerker, who is our CTO, and Mona, who is product manager. Yeah. So so that's who is reporting to me. Right. But then we are recruiting, so there might be additional. So we're still growing and adding on all levels. Yeah. So that's kind of how that works. And then within the product engineering, exactly as it sounds, it's product engineering. Yeah. Those are two different teams, working both on building the product, obviously developing the product, and then we have a few engineers working entirely on making sure that it's running properly, backups, maintenance, surveillance, etc. Things like supporting our customers, things like that. Right. So that's part of the organization. Then in the commercial organization, we have CS, CSM, customer success management, the customer support services. That's one bubble. We have sales and then marketing. So that's fairly traditional. Yeah. And that is working well to some degree. I think one of my mentors said that you are organized like an industry. and I actually agree with that, because I think it's maybe even a great way to organize if you're going to be operationally efficient. Yeah. But it's not a great way to organize if you want to be creative. So we're looking at ways, and we're running themes during our quarters to do cross-functional things. Obviously, product engineering is extremely cross-functional. Yeah. But also we want to be cross-functional over the entire team. Yeah. And so it's a balance of being creative, strategic, make new things, and be super efficient in our operations. Yeah. And I think those two, to some degree, are competing forces, and also organizationally. Yeah. It's a balance if you want to be super efficient and just produce stuff, whatever that production is, outbound calls or code or whatever it might be, versus being creative and breaking new ground. For sure. Yeah, and just talking about those perspectives, how would you say it's been developed? Looking at how the company is structured. Yeah. Have you tried alternative ways? I'm hearing already that you're open to actually experiment with this, which is positive, of course. But before this, talk about how you thought maybe an org structure should look, and maybe you've tried that, right? Yeah. So we are right now reorganizing our product and engineering organizations. So we're kind of restructuring them in smaller squads that they'll work in. And that is both because we're growing, but we also want to increase the ownership, autonomy, and competence on different parts of the product. So that's one thing that is going on. On the commercial side, we're also looking at not so much maybe reorganizing as finding ways to what I said, working more in teams that are maybe focused on a particular segment of the market. Yeah. So one thing that has been obvious for us, we're addressing both the private and the public market. Yeah. Very different buyer journey for those two buyers. Yeah. So it's been very natural to have those two sales teams work as two smaller teams. Right. Obviously, there's a lot of knowledge sharing, of course, and training and things and reporting and stuff like that. But also, it's very obvious that is helpful to separate it. For sure, 100%. So, and I wouldn't say that. Maybe to some degree also, as we've started targeting more and more larger customers. It's been a slight slide towards larger. That has also changed the structure in how we go to the market and the velocity of that motion. So I think that also is influencing, maybe not so much the organization as the daily work and what people are doing.
Yeah. Cool. Well, we're already into it, but let's dive deeper into a particular segment of this sort of show that I wanted to talk more about, of course, which is about growth strategies, right? And I wanted to talk to you about and I know asking a question to somebody, and framing it like, hey, what's your growth strategy? Yeah. I know that's huge, right? Yeah. So I don't want to do that to you, but I still want to get into, I know you're the CEO here, so of course you're not, deep diving into every particular tactic, right? Yeah. But still, you oversee a lot of functions. Yeah. And I know you personally like, marketing. I know you like sales. So just talk to me a little bit about what you see in the overall strategy, in the overall sort of go-to-market strategy, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a big question. So let's start and see where we go. So one thing, let me start with this. As I talked about NRR, I truly believe for a company like this to be successful, that's where you need to start. You need to have happy customers that are growing, using the product more, and then they will be willing to pay more. Yeah. Create value first, then extract value. Yeah. I think that is kind of where this starts. So I think that's an important bit. We've invested heavily in our CS department or the CS team. Right. And that's also what I'm hearing back, and that's also where some of our growth is coming from, growing existing customer base. Yeah. But also referrals from those customers, people changing jobs, things like that. So that's at the core of it. Another part that is also, as I've already mentioned, is that we've shifted our ideal customer profile.
Let's get into it. That's the name of the show. So we can't get past that part.
It's the abbreviation, the I.C.P. So we've seen that we are slightly larger customers. Yeah. Or we can talk more about what that means. But those get more value from the product. They are willing to then also pay more for the product. Yeah. It's stickier. We have less churn. That's one of the things we've seen. And I think that has been also a way of growing because, and I can share the exact specific here, but the average revenue per account has grown quite dramatically over the past 12 months. Okay. So we did a huge initiative last year around this area. Yeah. And
the initiative meaning going on with larger accounts? Or
I would say the initiative started with who should we go for? What's our I.C.P? It was kind of iteration of that. Right. That kind of fell into that, and that I talked about the themes earlier. We've done a lot of work in defining how we can serve them better. So we've launched a few things, offerings that are specifically targeted at those larger customers. Yeah. We've made a number of changes, and it's been like when I look back at the numbers, it's like, wow. And it's not me, I can tell you, it's the team that have done that. But it's really amazing to see only in 12 months that it's to some degree a different business. So going back to that's also a way of growing, is shifting your customer base and see how much they're willing to pay for it. Yeah. And then kind of the last piece is then what market are we addressing? Yeah. As I told you, we're addressing both now the public and the private market. Right. We've invested a lot, I would say, from our perspective. Everything
of course. Yeah, it's relative,
Relative, But we've invested a lot in our public offering because it's super long processes. So that has been a huge investment over the last few years that is now really paying off. So that's also a way of growing. Yeah. And then it's the international piece where we've also kind of have the piece where companies are coming to us, but also they're very going after a market that we're also going after. So
interesting. And so what would you say is obviously we are here in Stockholm, Sweden, which is one of the main markets, of course. But talk to me a little bit about the different types of markets that you're active in right now.
Yeah, so in terms of geography or?
Geography, yeah.
Yeah. So majority is today in the Nordics.
Yeah.
I would say that we have most traction, well, doing the most of the business or revenue is coming from Sweden and Norway.
Yeah.
Which is not true actually, but in the Nordics it's the most.
Yeah, yeah.
Then actually US is a market for us as well.
Yeah, right.
So, and we're not, we have a slightly different strategy there, which is more around referrals than actually actively going after that market. Obviously it's a huge market.
Of course.
So we've, for example, had Campbell's Soup.
Okay.
That come in as a customer just before the summer.
Okay. Okay.
I mean, so, which is referral based. So that's a slightly different way to go about it. Whereas, for example, in Norway and Sweden, we're much more aggressive in terms of marketing and sales, partnerships, etc.
Yeah.
So, and then we have a number of companies in many different countries, but those are more spread out. So I would say the Nordic market and the US market are where most of the revenue comes from.
Right. Yeah. And then this, you can get into this if you want to or not, but is there any plans of, or do you see any concrete next sort of country, to go into, or something that's already in the experiments of?
We have been experimenting quite a lot with European countries.
Right.
And there is, given the market we're addressing, there is European markets that are very interesting. We haven't. It's not super clear yet exactly if there will be one or multi. It could also be that we're addressing multiple markets, but a very niche segment. So we're playing around with some stuff there. So there's not like,
No, of course not.
But that we're doing it, that's decided, and so it's more the how.
Exactly. Talk to me a little bit about, I would say, if you focus on the Nordic perspective, right? Talk to me about the differences between, if you see any differences between, going to market in Sweden versus going to market in, Norway, Denmark. Are there any obvious differences that you see? And I'm talking from the buyer's perspective, and how they buy maybe, and how they view you, and how easy it is to get in touch with them, and so on, right?
It's mostly hearsay. I wouldn't say that we have a strong. I think it's slightly different. For example, we have had easier. It's been easier us for breakthrough. For example, in Norway, even reaching out, like doing outbound. Than in, for example, Denmark or in Sweden. Well, Sweden. We have much better. Like we're much more known.
Of course, you got a very strong
home market. So it's different. But I don't know if there is that big of a difference that we noticed. To be honest, it's not super clear.
Okay, interesting. And it's funny that you say that, because depending on who you talk to that addresses the Nordic market, there's so many different opinions. Not opinions, I would say, but there's so many different experiences on how to actually go to market in these countries, right? Some people are like you, saying that, hey, I don't see many obvious differences. Of course, there's difference in culture, there's difference in the obvious language barriers and so on, right? But I also notice a lot of SaaS people noticing that, hey, there's a bit of a difference getting into Denmark here, which is actually more difficult than I thought it might be.
But there, like Denmark, for example, both like from a competition perspective, it's different. I think that Sweden and Denmark has a relationship where you need to think about like just language is one thing.
Of course.
In Norway, obviously, you can speak Swedish. Because like everyone in a restaurant speaks Swedish, so it's so obvious. Whereas in Denmark, you have more of a language barrier.
Right.
So I think yes, for sure there are differences, but I also think that to some degree, we are, as I think this is more human condition and nature, that we're seeking those differences. In Finland they are very like. Yes, a culture maybe, but so that's why I'm saying it's mostly hearsay. You hear people giving reasons for why it's not.
Right.
Whereas more like a strategic analysis that is actually different. Obviously, Denmark is different and Norway is different than Sweden. But what are the things that actually matter from a buyer perspective? So, for example, you could say with like privacy things. Norway not being part of EU, that's different. That's a detail.
Yeah.
But it's sometimes an important detail.
Yeah.
So there's many smaller things.
No, of course, and I mean, we can get into a lot of details, of course, and I like that you're actually making a difference of, obviously people are culturally different depending on what country you're in, but as you say, that's not something that you can, either you just face that's the fact, right? But it's not gonna, at the end of the day, what matters to a lot of people is, of course, how is this product or software helping my business, or how is this helping me solve my problems or my business problems, right?
But that's the good point, because I know by a fact, because we have paying customers in Japan, Australia, Egypt, Brazil.
Right.
The product works everywhere.
Exactly.
The question is, how do you get it? How do you sell it in that? And I guess that's what you're asking.
Exactly. Because that's, I think, for every, I would say, Swedish-funded company or Swedish-founded company, at the end of the day, you have to go, because we're a small country, there's, only so many companies.
For sure,
You got to look elsewhere if you want to be growing in a bigger company, right?
Yeah.
So that's why I'm asking, just to hear your points on how that is working for you, and have you found success there, and what are some of the barriers that you see, and so on, of course. But then again, obviously, as you're saying, there's going to be minor details here and there, and that's for each company to find out on their own, of course, because
it's private, public, direct channel versus partner channel.
Exactly.
So there's many dimensions to this. But I'll get back.
For sure, absolutely. But I think one thing that's interesting in this question is, and it will be interesting to hear your perspective on this. Having a local presence or not, which is more of a strategic question, right? Should I actually hire maybe a local sales expert in Norway or Denmark, or should I actually have my own people that are here in Sweden to address, the primary buyer in Norway or Denmark, for example, right? Any thoughts on that?
I think probably a quite obvious one. Most of our sales, we never meet the customer physically.
Right.
So why? But having said that, if you're going to sell in Norway, I think it's obvious. It's an advantage if you know the details and ins and outs of the culture, business life, what happened this weekend. So I think do you have to be Norwegian? No, but it's probably should have been in that culture and knowledge of it. So I think that's helpful. Is it required? No, absolutely not for all customers, but I think that's part of the segmentation. Do we have a customer that is willing to buy in English online, never meeting me, or are we addressing customers that want to talk Norwegian, have a physical meeting, and drink a beer? I mean, I think it's an I.C.P. almost question.
I was going to get to that. I think that's the first part, of course, and if it fits under the I.C.P., then it should probably. I totally get it.
But I think that, and I see a lot of Swedish companies. I think a lot of companies in many countries do this. I think a lot of companies have kind of burnt themselves in setting up a local office because it becomes super expensive. Obviously, there are now today simpler ways of doing it with deal and blah blah blah. All of those services. But still, it costs money and.
Of course, and that's why I was also thinking that of course it's more of a strategic question, right? Rather than is it good or bad, right? So. That makes sense.
And it's also a timing question, because I think both are true. There comes, I mean, that's actually we're sitting here today in Learnifier Studios in Stockholm. This has been a vision for a long time, to have this kind of open space, street level entrance, where we have customers, partners come in. I'm so excited for when we open it in Berlin, Barcelona, and so
for sure,
it will come.
No, it will.
So if it's not part of the sales strategy, I'll make it part of some other strategy.
No, I got it, totally. And we're actually gonna get into that in a bit. Before that, Mattias, I wanted to maybe take a few steps back, because I remember when we first met, right? We were this was in 2014-ish, right? And for me, that was as I said, that was my introduction to SaaS, right? And I remember, I don't know if you remember it, but I remember you gave me a book.
Oh, it was.
Do you remember the name?
Yeah, hold on. It's the guy who was building the SDR thing at Salesforce.
Maybe the most hated perspective today, right?
Yeah, it's what is it called? Revenue.
Predictable revenue.
Predictable revenue. Yeah, that's the one.
So it was predictable revenue by I think his name was Aaron Ross or something, right? Yeah. And I wanted to talk about the evolution of that. Yeah, no, because I remember that book because I was studying that book like a madman, right?
But when we started that, no one did it.
No, I know, and it was actually quite successful. I would say in the beginning, right? And why I wanted to start there is because if you look at it, 2014, when you say it, it sounds like, that wasn't that long ago, right? But then when you look at how buyers buy today, and then when you look at the strategies and the tactics that are in place today in go-to-market strategies, some people argue that, hey, those days are over, meaning the predictable revenue method, that doesn't work anymore. And then some people are like, hey, I don't know what you're talking about. I just did an email blast last month and I got 10 meetings and then I closed the deal from that, right? So talk to me a little bit about, what's working for you here, and talk to me about, your perspective of, the evolution of sort of predictable revenue to, I don't know, demand generation that's more popping today, right?
Yeah. Wow. Yeah.
And I know that's also huge.
Yeah, but it's I think it's pretty obvious. I think everyone has experienced the shift, whereas I think when in 2014 I felt that I did not receive a lot of sequences.
Yeah.
It felt like when we sent them, no one had a clue that it was a sequence.
Right.
Today it's totally like me being me in my role in this market. Yeah. Obviously I get tons.
Of course.
But I think that also is like if you have a different role in a different market, it might still be new to you.
Yeah.
And that might be part of the answer why it's still working for some.
Yeah.
Will it continue working? I guess I know my nephew just starting doing like cold calling, selling, postkodlotteri.
Yeah.
And that also works,
right?
Like so I think it's a matter of the payoff and who you're addressing, and so.
Of course.
So I think it will still be there. Yeah. Will it be the primary method? Will it be new again? No, I don't think so. Yeah. There's new methods coming.
Of course.
So I think that's true, and I think that. But having said that, there's also obviously been a huge shift towards inbound and that methodology that has also happened over the last 10 years. Yeah. But I know for a fact that many of those companies that do that do a lot of outbound.
Of course.
Which is also, obviously they do it because it works.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's either or. I think also we've just had Anders join the team as head of partnerships, and I think this term has also been coming nearbound, which I think is nice. Where kind of what I talking about like referring people and for customers, or working with other companies. That also makes a lot of sense. Yeah. But maybe going back to the piece without I think there's assumptions to be made, or with the tools that are coming AI based, for example.
Right.
It'll be interesting to see what that does to inbound. Yeah. Because it seems like content marketing will be there. It's an exciting future.
At least. For sure, yeah.
Yeah, because that could increase the value again of some sort of an outbound approach. Or I guess it's going to be called something else. Yeah. But I guess there is some interesting paths to be seen where you can do more of a personal conversation, not the cold call maybe. Right. But still a personal dialogue that is highly customized. Right. Maybe sort of kind of an ABM strategy. Right. Account-based marketing strategy for individuals. It's like it opens up a lot of doors where you can apply things that you only could apply to large companies, to small companies. Right. So I think that is very exciting. Yeah. I kind of now ranted off.
No. You go ahead. We'll cut that shit out. No. I'm just joking with you. No, but I think it's interesting.
Turns out to be a 5 minute. We spent 3 hours, but it's 5 minutes when it goes live.
Turn into an AI episode. Right? No, but the reason why I like to talk about that is because you know me since before, of course, and I've done both sales. I've been on the CS side, and now obviously on the marketing side, right? And then you hear all of these assumptions, right? And you've tried so many different things, and then I just can't stop thinking about people, and especially I would say from the as we know, a lot of the go-to-market strategies in SaaS, now we're starting to build up the community here in Sweden, and I think we've come pretty far.
Oh, yeah.
And there's a Nordic perspective of how to build SaaS companies, of course. But I would say that the greater perspective, or sort of the theory and the practice and everything, kind of comes from the States, right, or the US market, right? Yeah. And when you listen to, you know, their perspective of how going to market, and if the go-to-market strategy includes as an outbound strategy or not, now you get the feeling that it doesn't. Like it doesn't have a place there. Like buyers are tired of, you know, getting these sequences, and, you know, mailboxes are flooded and so on. And then you kind of go to your, you know, day-to-day business, and you look at, hey, what would be the best way of going to market here? Yeah. And then, of course, you got to try stuff, right? Yeah. And then when we try stuff, and I'm talking from a perspective of, you know, for BusinessWith, for example, right? And I know you guys are kind of doing similar things, right? And then you're like, but hey, this person actually answered, right? And then that actually turned into a meeting. Yeah. And then when you look at, you know, the deal stage has gone from, you know, in a process, and then it was one, and you look at the source and the way it started, and you're like, but then why shouldn't I do that? Yeah. So coming back to it, I just think that, hey, it's never either or. No. You know, you got to look at, hey, what's working for me? Where am I at, right? Maybe I'm not in San Francisco where every executive gets these AI bots and, you know, I'm in Sweden, right? Yeah. This is my market right now where I'm in the Nordic perspective. So I got to try what's working for me. And I think that's something that I just like to talk about that, because it's just, you know, people are throwing so many things that are working and not working, 10 things that used to work, and now 5 things that are just working in 2023, you know, and I don't know. I just feel like when at the end of the day, you got to look at, hey, what's working for me, right? Yeah. And so I just wanted to...
But I would say that it's, as I said, I receive, obviously, as many do, tons of emails, and to be honest, many that I never respond to. But then I also receive the occasional email where I feel this email cannot be deleted. I have to respond. And either I like have the worst FOMO, like fear of missing out thing going on, whereas someone else seems to be doing. So I think those emails they happen, but they are too. I mean, it's more of a quality question, I would say.
Of course.
Because I would say it's probably easier to reach me via email than via phone. Yeah. So I think a well-written email is a good way of reaching me if you have the right message. But obviously, it's like when it's also like addressing the right person in the organization. I think that's a huge challenge for many. I think it is for us as well, because it's hard to know who owns kind of the budget or the issue or the challenge.
Exactly. For sure.
But that's kind of where I go back to. If you only would send those awesome emails, I think it would be a brilliant strategy to only do not only that, but I think then that would work. The issue is not the format, it's the quality. Right. It's too easy to send. When we started sending those emails, we sent them manually. Right. Now, obviously, every CRM has some sort of a sequence tool in it.
Of course, yeah.
And I think that's where maybe technology gets in the way. Meaning it's too easy to send it, and then you lower the quality. Right. Instead, like still a lot of if you would craft the email well, send it to the right person at the right time, which is obviously super hard.
Of course.
Then I guess it still works.
Yeah. No, 100%. And I totally agree. I also wanted to get into some, like, okay, outbound is clearly something that is still in motion, right? Yeah. What else do you see that, you know, are working for you in terms of, you know, growth strategies, something that you guys do and have implemented that's actually bringing you in qualified buyers, right? Yeah. Could you talk a little bit about some of those strategies, maybe without going into the tactics of each and every... Or you could do that as well.
I remember asking, I was recruiting for marketing, and I asked, like, what's this? And do you have a secret trick? I was like, no, it's only hard work. And I think
but it doesn't have to be a secret.
That's the honest response.
Yeah, of course.
That is a lot of testing, a lot of errors, a lot of things not working. Yeah. I do think, if I would point something out that I think has been working well for us, is events, webinars. Yeah. We don't necessarily call it a webinar, but it's a webinar format. Events of different kinds. I think that has been great, where we have... Hopefully, the people signing up feel that we are doing it, trying to share information and knowledge. Right. And if we're going to sell them the product, it's going to be, or sell them our services, it's obvious.
Yeah.
Like we state that up. Then it's that type of event.
Right.
But we're honestly trying to share knowledge and information, or especially knowledge.
Yeah.
And I think hopefully that shines through. And that has also made it. Like we had a webinar a few weeks ago. I think we have 700-800 signups.
Okay.
So that
nice
is
job. Yeah.
Yeah. When we've had a number of where it's, and it's, I mean, you could easily buy that on Facebook. Like you could have thousands of people.
Right.
But I mean, it's quality.
Right.
People,
Yeah.
People we want to have in the room. So.
Of course. Yeah. 100%.
So I think that's one of the and there are ways of tactics and of getting those people in, working over time with different types of content,
right?
Working with the right people, not always. It's not always being us presenting, for example.
Yeah.
But I think that's one of the things that has been working well, I would say.
Yeah.
But then aside from that, I mean, there are so many different things going on.
Yeah,
so,
of course, yeah.
That's the one I can point on.
No, but I understand, and I think it's also interesting, because, I mean, just thinking about growth, of course, I mean, it's difficult. Like what you said, I mean, no, I don't have any secrets. It's pretty much hard work, right?
Yeah.
And I like that answer because I think that it is difficult, right?
Yeah.
It's not easy to just. The image of SaaS and software is kind of glorified, and it's like, just buy a domain and go do an email blast and get started in having your first paying customers and go find some money, right? And you'll be good. And it's also been like a personal journey for me because I feel like marketing or growth means a lot more than just looking at, hey, what are they doing, or what's working for them? Because if we look at it, right, asking yourself, hey, what's working? I mean, we could basically go on the internet now and find the entire growth strategy from Salesforce, right? Yeah. Does that mean we're gonna sell quadruple? I don't know what their revenue is at right now, but we're actually one of the largest companies in the world, right?
Yeah.
Or highest value companies in the world. So that doesn't mean by just knowing what people do, that doesn't necessarily mean that, hey, I can do that, right? So I actually like that answer, and it's kind of cliche in some parts, or in some ways, that no, it's just hard work, right?
Yeah. But I think it becomes to some, at least at this level of a company, but maybe always, it's personal. And what I mean by that is that even the strategy, someone and this is even more cliche. Yeah. Someone has to get up in the morning and feel excited about it.
Exactly. And
because it's going to shine through.
Yeah.
Especially if you do physical stuff. But I think in general, if people do things with passion, it will shine through. Right. People feel that this is a person that actually loves what they're doing, they're engaged with it, and that will shine through in what you're doing. So I think it comes back to that. And that comes back to building a team, leadership.
Right.
Oof. And I mean, if it's hard building a SaaS product, I think everyone would say it's harder to build that team. It's
100%.
And that's what I mean. It's hard work. It's
of course, 100%. Yeah. No, I totally agree with you. And I don't know. I was just thinking about the concept of I was talking to you earlier about some people, some founders, or maybe some companies can be a bit afraid of talking about what they do. Yeah. But, I kind of refer back to, I was doing consulting as well for a while, right? For maybe 2 years. And I was looking at a bunch of different companies and their go-to-market strategies. And to be honest, when you look at software companies, I mean, talking about the companies that are pretty much in the same size, right? Going after the same markets and so on. I wouldn't say that the way, or sort of the plan, it wasn't really that different, right? What mattered more was actually, how people executed something, right? And that's refers back to what you was talking about, does the team and the person that are doing that, are they actually willing to wake up every morning and actually do the hard work? Which kind of sounds cliche, but it's still, at the end of the day, what gives you results is actually executing, right? And are you executing it at the highest level that you can, right? Yeah. And I think that's, at the end of the day, that is what truly matters. Yeah. Not, hey, what are you doing right now? Because everybody can go on and do a Google ad.
Yeah.
Like if you have money, you can purchase keywords,
for sure.
right? It's easy, I would say.
Yeah.
And not downgrading the skill of actually, doing that.
Yeah, that's all.
Sorry to all the consultants out there.
Oh my Lord.
No, but really, I mean,
that's the thing in itself.
So I just wanted to point that out, and I think it's nice to hear that.
But it's also maybe a little bit sad, isn't it?
Which one?
That there's so many similar tactics.
Yeah. Of course.
So like the other day, I received an envelope.
Okay.
Like with some.
Oh, like physically.
Physically.
Oh, addressed to you.
Yes.
Oh my God.
And I was like, hey guys, gather around. And that's like, it's so. It's actually one person that I worked with years ago. She said it's easy to be different.
Yeah.
Being different and relevant. That's the hard thing.
Right.
And I think so that could be one thing. Obviously, I'm not. But that's kind of what I mean when it's sad, because it's that excites me.
Yeah.
Doing something different, but it's just being different. That's easy. I mean, we could spray paint the entire office. That would be different.
Of course.
I'm not sure if we're relevant.
No. That makes sense.
And that's what I mean. That it's a bit sad. That there's a lot of similar tactics.
Yeah. Of course.
And I'm not. So it's exciting to see companies that are trying new things and have the courage to do that and stand out.
Yeah.
And I think as well as doing marketing, it's the same with product. Obviously, you should be aware of what competition is doing in the different markets. Yeah. But I think inspiration needs to come from other places.
Of course.
Because if you're mimicking, you have to decide some things you just need to copy.
Of course. Yeah, no.
But then if you want to do something that stands out, you need to, I don't know, go to a museum or...
No, I totally get the point. Of course, there's always a certain point or a certain piece of creativity and originality, of course, that you can't copy. But
I guess that's what breaks the curve.
Yeah, I think so too.
Because like optimizing the ads, for example, that can give you 10% more, but it's not going to break the curve.
No.
Once again, I mean, there's... You know what I'm getting.
Yeah, no, of course.
We're just shaming
no. Not at all. And also I wanted to get into, we've been mentioning, of course, I.C.Ps, right? We've been talking about learning. And so I wanted to kind of dig deeper into that. Yeah. But before that, I also wanted to ask you a little bit about something that I know that you're truly proud of, right? Because we are here today, obviously, at Learnifier's office, and I saw the logo outside, which was not only Learnifier, but it took me a while to see, but that's Learnifier Studios, right? And I want to hear your take on that, because I know that that's been a vision of yours for many years, right? And we're at this beautiful place, right? That immediately when I saw it, I was like, man, he actually did it. It only took him some time, right? But again, this is actually it, right? So talk a little bit about what Learnifier Studios is and kind of what it means to you.
Yeah. So once again, maybe backing up, when Jerker and I founded the company, it was like he wanted to go on, month-long travels and work from other countries. I had small kids. I spent time in the US during that time. So it's always been a very natural thing for us to work remotely, as you know. So I think the physical space has always been something that it's not been a core part of what we built. But having said that, we also said that, well, we know that we want a physical space. We want a space where you can come to, not only if you work with us, if you're but also if you're a consultant, if you're a partner, if you're a customer. And that was kind of the start for the concept of Learnifier Studios. It being a place where people can gather and come in, get energy, be creative, work together. Right. And I think going into the pandemic, we saw that, well, this is going that different direction than Learnifier Studios. But I'm really glad we made a quick decision that we were going to go fully remote. Okay. So the company during the pandemic, which obviously everyone was, but we were very explicit and said, we're now going to set up the company to be fully remote, which we still are. Then, I think it's probably 8 or 9 months back now, we opened this space, which is then Learnifier Studios. And the idea, as I said, is to have a space where you can come in and do work, but also meet people, bring in partners. So we've had partner events, customer events. We have our quarterly meetings here where we fly everyone in or train or whatever transportation they choose, depending on where they come from. And then everyone gathers in this place. And this is actually one of the things where I've been inspired, not by some competitor or someone in the market, but a totally different company that's called Monocle. They sell magazines. And it's kind of sparked an idea. And that paired with the idea that we should be able to work from anywhere is what created this concept.
Okay. Nice.
And so that's kind of the background for it.
No, I mean, I love it because it's always fun to see, you know, when somebody has been thinking about something for a long time, right? And then has been talking about it, you know, passionately, and then see it come to fruition, if you could say, right? And then seeing it live and in action, right? It's like, I don't know. I was a little bit proud when I saw the place, and the first time I was here, I didn't even see the logo, right? So that's why I was like, man, did he actually do Learnify Studios, or is it, you know, just an office? But then now when I looked out, I was like, oh, it is Learnify Studios. It is the studios,
and
it's nice.
It's nice. Because it also gave us like. And this is totally different topic, but why do you have a space like this? And I think that it seems as even colleagues that work from different countries or in different parts of Sweden, this is important to them. There's something with physical space that is magical, and I'm not sure. I believe it has something to do with the feeling of home and some sort of security and proudness and being proud of something. But it's interesting with that. Talking about SaaS, that's also an interesting thing with this. Actually, we rent all of the furniture. Everything is on leasing. So this is also a studio as a service.
Exactly.
So everything is like on a rolling subscription,
right?
Which is also. It's just fun, like doing it in a slightly different way. So we could be out of here tomorrow, not exactly, but in a few months.
No, of course.
Which is also, as you grow in a company, we've been working rather closely with the property owner and a few different partners to set that up. Because I think that's a broader issue for many companies, maybe especially in SaaS as they grow. What do they do with their office, etc.
Exactly. Nice, man. No, congratulations on that. I like it, and I love to see it, of course. And then, you know, talking about, of course, SaaS in general, but I also wanted to sort of get into, you know, your category, of course, right? But before that, I remember when we were talking about doing this together, right? I talked to you about what my vision was for, you know, a show like this, you know, and what I wanted to talk about, right? And one of the things that, please. Thank you so much. One of the things that I wanted to talk about was, of course, you know, SaaS, you know, being BusinessWith. Of course, we're in the SaaS sort of community, right? Obviously, a lot of, I would say, 99% of our customers are SaaS businesses, right? So SaaS, as it is of course, you know, big for us, right? We want to talk about that. We want to be close to that industry, of course, right? And we want to, you know, talk about things that other SaaS founders and SaaS people like to talk about and like to learn about, right? And then I was talking to you, right? And then you were quite fast, you know, to tell me that, hey, SaaS is cool, right? But learning is cooler. Not your words. I'm not, you know, I'm paraphrasing. You know,
you got it on tape.
Well, I mean. Talk to me a little bit about that, of course. And honestly, of course, I know that wasn't your particular words, you know, but I would say, do you remember that talk that we had? And do you remember where I'm getting, or do you understand where I'm trying to get?
I totally remember that conversation. And I think like where I was coming from was that SaaS as a concept is, one thing is that I'm not sure, is there anything else today? Like it's everything is, what I mean is, and I'm, both, I mean, in the software industry, most is now, so it's kind of a given. Also, as I said, with this office, like the subscription model is now such a given. So I think that even though you're not in software, you know that churn is a thing and retention is a thing and things like that. So I think it's become maybe because I've been in the business, but it's general knowledge now, I think, to a large degree. So I think that's one part. The other part is that it's I spent a few years in the advertising business. And it's I think maybe especially that business, but also SaaS to some degree is getting a bit we're like hooked up on our own little puddle with companies, and I think that's great, and I think like what you're doing, what a lot of the companies are doing to create that, because it helps share the knowledge, and so I think that's great. But it's also like we are a company that helps other companies with their training and learning. That's the mode we're doing that is a SaaS platform. So I think you need to put that in the right order. We're not a SaaS company that happens to do learning. It's just our mode of operating our business, and it's our business model and the way we develop software. But the core thing is what we do for our customers and the problem we're solving. So I guess that's kind of where I came from. I'll happily talk about ARR and CAC and LTV.
I know. And that's why I said, I mean, maybe you didn't say it, but what I heard was actually you saying SaaS is cool, but what I do with Learnifier and what we do for our company, for our customers, means more to me than just the business model, right? Or the overall acronyms of how we do it, basically. And I don't know, it gave me a perspective as well, right? Because we get so easily caught up in the little cool world that we think that we're all in, right? And the media is reporting on everything, and just circling back to what happened last week with power players of SaaS, for example, and I'm not gonna
I saw you.
No, I saw you too, man. But I'm not gonna say that I'm not saying that it's bad or that wasn't fun at all. No, obviously it's nice. It's cool to be recognized, and it's fun and good that people are actually reporting on what we do in this business and so on. 100%. But I just think that, and I want to talk about this because
but I think it's one of those. Both is true. I think it's amazing that this, like the SaaS industry, exists and that we talk about it. I was at this great conference hosted by, I think it was Monterrey a week ago. Really SaaS focused, B2B SaaS focused. It's amazing that we have that in Stockholm. You used to have to go to San Francisco. Now we have it there. We have a VC community that is awesome. We have a lot of founders that are now investing. We have an ecosystem. We have actually running like tech ecosystem here in Stockholm, and I think that is just amazing.
No, I totally agree.
I'm most excited about learning and those stuff things.
No, of course. No, I love it, and I mean, just let's circle back a little bit, to the news that broke, right, and the 199 power players of SaaS, right? Because I wanted to talk about this, and it's not to make fun out of anyone, right? Because that's not what we do. But it's just a perspective, I think, that I wanted to talk to you a little bit about. And I don't expect, a full-blown, 15 minutes of talking about this, but I gotta get this off my chest.
Okay.
Because
I'm ready.
Yeah, cool, man. Because I was just thinking about that nomination or award, right? Look, because and it's just how it was done. I think that is just a little bit. Let me talk to you a little bit about SaaS versus category, right? And then we kind of talked about your view on the SaaS kind of world versus what you actually are passionate about, right? So talk to me a little bit about what is it that you are passionate about when it comes to this category, and what category would you place Learnifier in? And I got a follow-up question on that.
Yeah, those are two questions. So I think what I'm ultimately passionate about is people growing. That learning. I find myself learning things that I don't have a clue what I'm going to do with it, but it's just fun. And I think that energy is something that we should harness, and this becomes like, as humans, I think it makes a lot of sense. And I think harnessing that energy and making it possible to, and this goes then into what we do, because we're not addressing individuals, we're actually helping companies and organizations. So what we're taking is that we're taking that harnessing of energy learning, putting that to an organizational context and helping companies to make it easy, engaging and efficient.
Right.
To do learning that helps them achieve business outcomes. That's
right.
what we're doing.
Yeah.
And that's what we're aiming for.
Yeah.
And so coming that then back to category.
Yeah.
I guess if you go to BusinessWith, we would be under LMS platforms, I would guess.
Yeah.
And that is how the customers talk about this category.
Yeah.
And I think that is, there's a lot of, I talked about this earlier. One of the things, like, our focus has not been learning management. That's something that you need to do to achieve learning.
Right.
But it's not an end goal in itself.
No.
Learning, business outcomes, those are end goals. That's
right.
what you want to achieve.
Right.
Learning management is part of that.
Yeah.
And so if you go back to, I said it should be engaging efficient. One of the things that we do is that we work a lot with efficiency to make it, so you have to spend less time doing administration, for example.
Right.
That's one of the things.
Yeah.
But then there's also the content creation, where you can actually create content. Is the pieces where it's not only someone in HR or L&D or centrally that can do this. It's actually anyone in an organization. And that's kind of where we slide from being an LMS to a learning platform. And this is like, if you're in this business, there's so many different words: LXP, LMS, learning platform.
Yeah.
It's one of the key concepts of marketing is defining the category. Yeah. I have to admit it's tricky because it's kind of in flux.
Yeah,
we don't call ourselves an LMS, we call ourselves a learning platform.
Right.
LMS is part of what we do.
Yeah.
But then again, if someone is searching for LMS, you'll be sure that Learnifier shows up.
Yeah.
Because that's how still the market is defined publicly.
Right.
So that's one part of it.
Right.
The other part is that actually a lot, so like internally for us, for example, we use Learnifier as a learning platform. We have our internal academy with onboarding and training and compliance training and everything.
Yeah.
But we also do, I also think I mentioned, we do quarterly meetings. So what that means is that everyone comes in for an afternoon. And we started doing that, and we had each team lead doing a presentation. We did that 2 quarters until we realized that, we're actually now doing the exact opposite of what we should be doing.
Yeah.
So now we're using Learnifier also to provide pre-reads or videos, I should say, that you do as prep work before coming to our quarterly sessions. Why do I mention that? Because most people wouldn't see that as training.
Right.
It's operational efficiency or something like that. So I think that's where this kind of tool grows into something else, which is some sort of a communication, knowledge sharing platform, which is today loosely defined.
Yeah.
If you have a suggestion, I'm open to it. But I think this is, to be honest, one of the challenges we have to define exactly what this is. And I think we live in a landscape of Slack and Teams and many other tools where this, and intranets where this needs to fit in.
Of course.
So it's a bit of a, I guess I'll stop there.
Yeah, no. I totally understand. And of course, there's the reason why I'm asking this is because I know that, of course, I mean, this is also like, you can look at this from many different perspectives, right? But either I think you're creating an entirely new category, like I'm not saying if you're in an existing category, there's no room for innovation. Yeah. That's not what I'm trying to say. But I'm saying if you're, carving out or creating a new category, then it's extremely difficult to even say what category you're in, right? Yeah. But then you as a company can define yourself and put yourself in a category because it creates ease, because it's easier for customers to actually find you and so on. But then there's always that dilemma where, well, I gotta define myself in this way because I gotta show up in search, right? Yeah. Because that's how, one part of the customer journey actually starts. But then I have another definition for me myself, which is totally different. And this is just, I think, as always, when it comes to growth, you gotta cater to the customer, right? You gotta be able to actually show up where they are actually searching for you, for example. You gotta make it easy for them to understand what it is that you do. And you gotta make it easy for them to buy. And that kind of starts with either you go full-blown innovation, right? You launch the iPhone in 29 or whatever. Or you put yourself in an existing category, right? So I just wanted to touch upon that.
But I also think that, like we said, we've actually been in business in almost 10 years. And I think we spent the first I don't know, maybe 5 years defining the category or maybe educating the market, I would say.
Yeah.
To be honest, I don't think we truly understood that we did.
Yeah.
Because we saw these other platforms that had a lot of features.
Right.
And we didn't, unfortunately, have the maturity to understand that what we were doing was similar but different. And to forcefully enough communicate that to the market.
Yeah.
I think it's not only us, but I think we and a few other players have shifted the market.
Yeah.
So it's still to many called an LMS, but it's totally different, or it's very different from what it used to be.
Yeah.
And has a very different focus. And I think this also is aligned with the shift where there's been a shift where you've seen HR, the way you look at people has shifted, kind of the strategic importance of how you develop people and competences has shifted over this time. So I think those to some degree are aligned, but there's many other factors playing in as well.
Of course.
So looking in retrospect, it's been a change. But it's still called. So
no, of course.
A category called LMS.
Of course, 100%. So, okay, talking about, category, of course, right?
Yeah.
We've established that, of course, there's a difference between how you view yourself in this category, not how you view yourself, but how you kind of view the category in itself. And then there's a way that the buyer kind of views the category, right? Let's get into, the buyer. We were talking about I.C.P, right? Who would you say is the ideal customer today? Like who is the primary buyer of a tool like Learnifier?
Yeah, so it's a company or an organization that has slightly more complex training need or L&D need, I would say, which usually means that there are a few hundred people or above.
Yeah.
And the reason for that is that they actually have some sort of a budget or people that are working with this.
Yeah.
That's important to us. It could be smaller organizations, but then they have a specific need around training. It might be training members, customer partners. But if it's training employees, it's usually a few hundred people and above.
Okay.
Meaning that our tool still does work for smaller companies, but those are not the ones we're targeting.
Yeah.
We do have smaller companies as well, but we're targeting and we see our larger customers getting the most value out of our product.
Yeah.
Because then there's things coming in such as integrations, automations.
Yeah.
A lot of those things where customers really appreciate how we can help with that.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Getting a lot of the manual work out of the way and actually focus on becoming more strategic, more business oriented in how they work with learning.
Yeah, perfect. That makes sense. I wanted to ask you also, why would you say, why would you, if you would describe it from, maybe a customer's perspective, what are some of the reasons that people are doing business with Learnifier, if that makes sense?
Yeah. So I mentioned one.
Yeah.
That is super important, automations, integrations.
Right.
If you're going to run training at a slightly larger scale, there's tons of work that you can automate. Yeah. And I feel that our customers feel that we do a good job with that.
Yeah.
So that's the efficiency part. There's also, we talk about distributed learning. Yeah. So that's the idea of having a tool where it's not necessarily one person. So for example, internally with us, I use ourselves as an example. Yeah. Anders, our head of partnerships, he's now going to do partner onboarding. Okay. He builds that in Learnifier. Okay. He doesn't have to go to someone else to do that. He can build it himself. Right. And if you think about a larger organization, you have a lot of subject matter experts that can be involved and share their knowledge. Yeah. So that's also a way to engage kind of the broader audience in a company or organization in learning. Yeah. And then I would say, and it's a terrible one in many ways because it's so easy to say because it's ease of use. But I think Jerker, my co-founder, he often asks me, easy for who? Yeah. And it's a brilliant question. It is. Because ease of use depends on what you need the task at hand. Yeah. And I think we're striking a good balance between ease of use and the complexity of the use case. Right. Yeah. And I that's what I hear from our customers. Yeah. That they appreciate that. It's easy to use. It's easy to use from someone who hasn't used it a lot, but it still solves our problem. Right. Because that's the other end. You might have something that is too easy that does not solve the problem. Right. And then, to be honest, maybe the first most important one. We usually say we're a people-first tech company. Yeah. Because we're people developing a product for people. Right. And I love that. The thing is that customers say that they love doing business with the people here. Yeah. Yeah, that's a huge part. It's everything from support, how we sell, how we do customer success. And it makes me super proud to hear that.
Yeah. No, I totally, I get that.
Me,
No.
But it's so that's, I think it's a super strong add-on to not only the product.
Yeah.
Also, because that's also one of the things you might want to do it so you never want to see the customer. No, we actually want to talk with the customer, engage with them.
Yeah.
And I think that's also an aspect of how you can do it.
Of course, that makes perfect sense. I wanted to finish off with 2 questions, right?
Yeah.
The first one being somebody that's gonna, buy in your category, right? What would you say? What would you give? What are some tips you would give to somebody buying into this category, right? Imagine an HR manager, for example, or a head of sales or whatever that want to do onboarding, for example. Just in general, give a few tips to somebody buying this category. Think of this, like, don't do that. What are some of those?
Okay, super quick would be think about what you actually want to solve. Like what is the problem at hand? Don't focus on features. Because there's tons of Excel templates out there with tons of features that you actually don't need. I think another part of it is also testing the software so that it actually works for you. There's a lot of beautiful websites out there, but try out the product and make sure that you will have someone to talk to once you start using the product. If you need help or additional guidance.
Love it. Perfect. And then finally, the last question. We've been discussing, all types of topics here today, which has been really fun. We've been talking about, of course, your journey into SaaS. We've been talking about growth strategies. We've been talking, I.C.Ps, and we've been talking about, category specifics, right? Who would you recommend I talk to the next time I do this?
So doing this sort of an interview?
Yeah, exactly.
I think you should talk to a guy I met the other day. Who is the CEO of OneFlow.
Oh, okay. Cool. Yeah. Know them pretty well.
I met him at a parents' meeting at school.
Okay. Yeah, for sure. Okay, cool.
So I'll hook you up.
Definitely do that. Look forward to speaking to him as well. Mattias, thank you so much for joining me today. It's been fun.
It's been fun.
It has really. And I look forward to seeing you guys grow. And I look forward to catching up with you maybe again in a year. See where you're at that point.
I'll be glad.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Take care.